As clouds of smoke rise swiftly into the windy autumn sky, a massive fire roars across the roof of Building 3001 at the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Center. It's now in its second day. It was the noon hour on Monday, November 12, when a spark from a roofing contractor's cutting torch had ignited a section of the huge structure's topside. In these scenes, 24 hours later, the persistent flames were eating their way deeper into the industrial complex. In its 40-hour lifespan, the blaze destroyed 17 acres of roof and damaged nearly 840,000 square feet of workshop space beneath it. It is the most extensive fire in Air Force history. Firemen from Tinker Air Force Base, along with personnel from 21 Oklahoma fire departments, battled the onrushing flames. It was more like a military conflict, complete with trenches, helicopter airstrikes, evacuations, and a contingency plan for chemical warfare. The choppers, filling their 500-gallon buckets at nearby Draper Lake, made many passes over the building and dropped their cargo into the smoke and flames. The fire, however, continued its march southward. Millions of gallons of water were poured onto the roof, but the tar cover shed the downpour like a duck's back, protecting the burning insulation underneath. Some of the fire was not always visible to the firemen as it spread inside the 17-inch roof, staying between the tar cover on top and the steel mesh below. It was a relentless and, much of the time, an inaccessible fire. Inside the building, the firemen tried shooting water up through the steel mesh, but that only spread the fire and left the men standing in a shower of sparks. Trucks filled with liquid nitrogen were brought in by an oil field firefighting firm, and crews laid pipelines through which the solution would flow. It was a backup measure should the fire not be stopped at some point farther north. Other workers, meanwhile, using axes and power saws, were cutting a third trench on the roof. It was the fire break that would stop the fire's pursuit to the south. When dawn arrived on Wednesday, the fire had been out almost 2 hours. Shortly after 4 a.m., Major General Richard A. Burpee, center commander, broke the news that the long fight was over. The November sun spotlighted the path the fire had taken, a huge door buckled and hanging precariously, a chopper dousing the last hot spots, rubble and other debris scattered across the guttered topside of the structure. And from the inside looking up, there were man-made trenches, all vivid reminders of the most extensive fire in Air Force history. The move back into 3001 could now begin. Here we see computers being returned to the Logistics Management Systems offices. 265 computers, 50 disk packs, and 10,000 tapes had been evacuated from the area. Even though the fire damaged the payroll host computer, 18,000 civilians were paid on time within the 8-day period following the disaster. The south end of the building also had undergone massive evacuation as 4 aircraft of the 135 series and 14 A-7s had been moved. Here we see spare parts of those aircraft lined up outside the complex. The conversion to a 135 moving line at the south end paid great dividends as they were able to be quickly evacuated. Another look at the 50-ton door on the north end of the jet engine repair shops. Its moorings softened by the extreme heat. It was exerting dangerous pressure on the walls which supported it. A crane was brought in to support it until it could be removed. The fire had shut down all the engine lines. How would the center get back into production? General Burpee was determined that the center would stay in business for national defense.
More than 2,000 Tinker employees filled a Dell City church before sunrise this morning. Their faces told the story. They wondered if they still had jobs after the devastating fire, and if so, when they could go back to work. The answers may have been a mixed blessing. They would go back on the job today, but cleaning up the mess would not be easy.
We're going to call on you to make sacrifices you haven't made. You're going to work in cold temperatures. It's going to be raining, dripping on you. It's going to be dirty. The tar is everywhere. But the only alternative to doing that, if we can't get back into production, the only alternative is enforced leave or furloughs. And I'm committed not to have that happen.
John Taylor.
Employees who would normally repair sophisticated jet engines today were issued waterproof boots and hard hats for the massive cleanup. It won't be fun work, but at least it is work. Much of the machinery is coated with roofing tar. It will have to be cleaned and moved to this area that was not damaged in the fire. That could take weeks. And beginning today, work will go around the clock to clean up the mess. That includes Thanksgiving Day. But most here don't seem to mind at all.
I will never complain about paying my taxes ever again. Tinkerfield has really been good to us all last week.
There is not even a guess at this point on when the building will be repaired. And until then, these workers know that staying on the job depends on how fast they clean up the mess and start repairing jet engines again. Jeff Fowler, News 4, Tinker Airport.
And so, 1 week after the fire had been touched off, the workforce was back in the building. This time, however, as these scenes show, there would be a different mission. The workers undertook a monumental cleanup, reconstruction, and relocation project. Engines and other equipment on the north end of 3001 had to be moved to the south side. For Tinker employees, it was a time for renewed dedication, teamwork, and perseverance. All of the machinery and aircraft parts that were beneath the path of the fire had to be cleaned. Teams of workers spent long shifts cleaning the tar and dirt from the valuable pieces of aircraft equipment. Everything in the jet engine repair shop had been touched in some fashion by the fire. Another major task would be replacing 20 acres of roof that were burned by the stubborn blaze or were damaged in the trench cutting. As quickly as possible, contracts would be awarded on the gigantic project. Here we see workers making temporary repairs to the top side of the structure. A C-141 touches down at Tinker a few days after the fire. It and a sister ship, along with 2 C-5s, all from Travis Air Force Base, bring 41 men and 10 portable hangars. General Burpee explains.
As soon as we clean the parts, the engine parts, we'll bring them out and store them in these buildings, and then we can work out of these buildings as a temporary storage area, feed them into our production assembly lines.
The airmen are members of the 4449th Mobility Support Squadron from Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico. The 10 hangars represent 484,765 pounds of harvest bear equipment. It was airlifted from Holloman within 3 days. The 4449th personnel accompany the equipment to advise and to erect the portable buildings. The Civil Engineering Squadron at Tinker assisted the Holloman Group in the project. The hangars would be used for storage of jet engine parts that were formerly housed in the north end of 3001. Arrival of the 4449th was a significant factor in the Tinker recovery program. As an official at Air Force Headquarters said, the effective and timely response of the 449th Mobility Support Squadron was a key element in returning the center to its vital Air Force mission and minimizing the impact of the center's workforce. Meanwhile, the recovery program continues at all points around the industrial complex. More engines are relocated, and many other tasks are carried out as Tinker personnel put in long hours to get the center back in full production. Everywhere, workers are busy at the gigantic program to regain the facility's production capability. There's a lot to do. The cleaning of parts and equipment, along with an inventory, are major tasks that must be completed first. Production continues also as the first rebuilt engine is turned out 2 weeks after the fire. General Burpee was there.
This is the first engine, the TF-30 P100, that we put together. It was a partial rebuild job, a B job, as you know it. And I'm told it was a little over 200 man-hours to get it going, but it does represent us getting back into production. And I think even more important, it's a symbol of what can be done when we all put our minds to it and get in there and relocate machines and get back into production, get things going. I should tell you that I've contacted a couple of other aircraft engine companies and asked them, and addressed specifically this TF-30 P100 engine, and asked them, we told them we might need some help, and I asked them what their capability would be if getting into production or even overhauling some of the engines for us while we got set up. Give us a preliminary time, and the shortest one I had was 6 months. And I couldn't believe it. And I said, well, we're going to be in production a lot sooner than that, so that was the end of the conversation. And we are. And it just pleases me, and I have to tell you that I have a great deal of pride, not only for what I know the workforce can do, but even more important is our country needs the engines, and we need to get them back out into the airplanes where they belong. And my hat's off to all of you. You've done a super job under difficult conditions. We've asked a lot from you, but I haven't seen one person turn back or want to do it any different. It's just been going super, and it pleases me no end. And I just can't, about all I can say. I just thank you for what you've done. And now that we got our production line started, of the TF-30 line, as you know, we're going to build up the other lines as soon as we can, and they're following right close by. So, great job. Thanks a million.
And now the project to repair the damaged north end must begin. Here we see workers going up with temporary walls to seal off the area from the rest of the building. If the work stays on schedule, the jet engine shop could be ready for production crews to return there by late summer of '85. Here are other scenes of production underway in 3001. It is a structure General Burpee called a tough old building. It proved to be that, as it withstood a massive fire for 40 hours. And fortunately, it was a fire that claimed no fatalities, nor did it claim any jobs. It stands today as a symbol of the Air Force mission and American determination to forever remain strong.